Monday mornings at the office always started the same. I arrived before everyone else, unlocked the door, brewed the coffee just how I liked it, strong, no frills, and sat at my desk to go through the weekend reports. The quiet hum of the printer, the steady click of heels and loafers down the hallway, the warm greetings from my team as they filtered in. It was the rhythm of a life I built with my own hands after the divorce. My company, my rules, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally steering the wheel of my own peace. The only strange thing lately had been my sister's absence. She hadn't shown up for a couple of weeks. No texts, no calls. Not entirely unusual, considering her dramatic tendencies, but enough to stir a flicker of curiosity. Still, things were finally quiet, or so I thought. I walked into the boardroom for our weekly strategy meeting, coffee still in hand, mentally preparing to pitch a new client campaign. And there she was, Jolene. Perfect posture, manic smile, sitting like she owned the place. Next to her sat a man I hadn't seen in 5 years. Paul, my ex-husband. The man who shattered my trust like it was nothing but cheap glass. And now he was here, smiling like he belonged. My hand tightened around the cup, the heat biting into my skin. I didn't say a word. Not yet. Jolene stood up, voice chirpy and bright like this was all normal. Surprise! I brought someone in to help us level up our strategy. He's got amazing experience, right? She looked right at me as she said it, like daring me to react. He stood slowly, extended his hand like this was some casual reunion. Hey, Maddie. Hey, Maddie. The words hit harder than any punch. I didn't take his hand. There was a flash, quick and sharp. Paul emptying our joint account before the ink on the divorce papers had dried. Paul showing up at my sister's birthday with a new girlfriend just weeks after we split. Paul lying through his teeth while I sat in a courtroom alone. And now, Jolene, my own sister, dragging him back into my life without a word. I smiled, not out of politeness, survival. Let's circle back to this later, I said, my voice steady, my insides on fire. Back in my office, I closed the door and sank into my chair. My hands trembled, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I stared at the family photo on my desk, taken back when we still pretended things were normal. Jolene had always been like this. When we were kids, she told everyone I cheated on my math test just because I got the highest score. I hadn't thought about that in years, but now it felt like an echo, one that never really stopped. This wasn't about Paul. This was Jolene saying again, "You don't matter." I whispered to myself, "The most dangerous knives come from the ones you once hugged." I found her later, in the lounge area, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. "You really think this is okay?" I asked quietly. She looked up, wide-eyed. "What? You said you were over him. And anyway, he's changed. He has ideas that could actually help." "You didn't think to ask me?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. This isn't about you. It's literally my company." "You mean our company?" she snapped. "Mom and Dad helped you start it. Don't act like you did this alone." I looked over at Paul, who was watching us from the hallway. Not saying a word, just standing there with that smirk he used to wear when he lied. I turned back to Jolene. "You have no idea what you've just started." She blinked, but I didn't give her time to respond. I walked away before the rage cracked through my skin. The rest of the day was a performance. I smiled at the staff, led meetings, reviewed reports. No one noticed anything was wrong. But when I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one Paul and I had once picked out together from a little shop in Austin. I opened my notebook, the same one I used when I rebuilt my life after the divorce. And I wrote, "He's back. She brought him in. Not because we need him, but because she wants to hurt me, and she thinks I'll let her." Then I flipped to a blank page and began sketching out a plan. "They want to play this game? Fine, I'll make the rules. You don't burn a bridge until you've built a better one across. They thought I'd roll over. What they didn't know, I don't lose quietly." 3 days passed. The tension at the office didn't explode. It seeped in, slow and sticky, like humidity before a storm. I walked through the halls and felt it, the subtle way conversations quieted when I came near. Glances exchanged over coffee cups, silences that weren't there before. It wasn't paranoia. It was the shift you feel when people start deciding which side of the line they're going to stand on. Raylene was suddenly everyone's favorite. She walked around like she was running the place, smiling, hugging, offering compliments that felt rehearsed. And Paul, he was always close behind, not officially hired, but always just helping out. It was during my second pass through the main floor that Melissa, our intern, stopped by my office. She closed the door, glanced over her shoulder, then leaned in. "I thought you'd want to know. They moved a few vendor accounts to a different spreadsheet. It wasn't from finance. And your name's not on the approval." She didn't say more, didn't have to. Loyalty sometimes looks like a whisper. And in that moment, I understood. The walls of my house were still standing, but someone had rearranged all the furniture. The next morning, I got in early, made myself a cup of coffee, and pulled up the financial logs. Nothing screamed theft, but the pattern was clear. Small transfers, just under the threshold that would trigger a red flag. New marketing expenses that led nowhere. And access logs. Paul had been inside files marked confidential. Betrayal never shows up with a marching band. It's quiet, like a drip in the ceiling. And if you don't pay attention, one day the roof caves in. I found Paul alone in the break room, nursing a bottle of coconut water like he owned the building. "You've been in the financial files," I said calmly. He didn't flinch. "Everything's transparent. You can check the logs." I did. He looked at me the way people look at someone they think is overreacting. A patient smile, a shrug. "Raylene said we were all on the same page, just trying to streamline." "And you thought streamlining meant hiding money in vendor invoices?" "Nothing's hidden. You're reading too much into it." He spoke like a man rehearsed, like someone who'd been told exactly what to say if confronted. Inside, my heart was pounding. On the outside, I just stared. They were sloppy because they thought I wouldn't notice. Or worse, they thought I wouldn't dare fight back. That afternoon, I drove to a small cafe off Westheimer, somewhere Paul and Raylene wouldn't be caught dead. I needed perspective. Across from me sat Diana, my old mentor from when I first started the company. She ordered her coffee black, no sugar, always had. "I didn't bring you here to vent," I said. "I need to know if I'm seeing this right." "You're not crazy," she said, before I could explain. "You're in a power struggle disguised as family drama." "I built this place," I whispered. She looked me dead in the eye. "Family can be your roots, or your chains. Depends on how you grow." I sat back. All the times Jolene, Raylene, sidelined me, made me the quiet one, the good girl, the cleanup crew. Now it wasn't just childhood fights. It was sabotage wearing a smile. When I got back to the office, I didn't slam doors or scream. I opened my notebook and started documenting. Date, time, description, witness, file name. Then I installed a tracking program on my private system, something legal, something silent. It would log every access to sensitive files. I didn't alert HR, not yet. I needed more than suspicion. I needed a noose they tied with their own hands. That night, I didn't watch TV. I called a contact from law school, a corporate attorney now running her own firm. While we didn't talk details, just a favor, a future meeting. Quiet steps. "I've been underestimating myself for far too long," I wrote in my journal before bed. The next morning, I arrived at the office before the sun rose. My nameplate had been moved, my parking spot replaced with a reserved for executive strategy. I moved it back. Inside, I rearranged my office. Every shared photo, every decorative piece Raylene had added. Gone. I placed a small lock on the cabinet holding contracts and marked it private. Before I logged in for the day, I grabbed a sticky note, wrote 6 words, and stuck it to my monitor. Never let a thief tell you what belongs to you. I wasn't going to confront them again. Not yet. I'd make them think they'd won. I walked into the office 2 weeks later with a stack of contracts under my arm, expecting the usual morning shuffle. The sun was just starting to press through the blinds. The air smelled like fresh coffee and corporate tension. The hallway toward strategic partnerships had something new. A framed contract hanging on the wall, glossy and bold. Creed and Raylene's names printed as signatories. Mine missing. I froze. I thought back to nights I negotiated that deal, lapsing deadlines in clients' rooms, dragging myself through contract clauses. I pressed my palms flat onto my desk. The contract was mine in draft, mine in meetings, mine in every late-night call. But they'd hung up a version that erased me. I asked Creed in front of everyone as I stepped into the hallway meeting. "Did you ever intend to credit me?" He looked surprised, that practiced calm. "Roles changed. Transparency is company policy now," Creed said. No apology, no acknowledgement. Inside me, betrayal sharpened, humiliation, but also resolve. If they thought this erased me, they were mistaken. After everyone left, I retreated to my study at home. Papers, emails, contracts sprawled out. I sifted through old drafts, timestamps, changes, found emails where my initials were overwritten, saw versions where I was listed as draft lead, memos where I contributed vision points. Each file told a story. I called Harlan late, voice low. "Am I the only one who sees this?" He listened, said the right things, that maybe this was more than oversight. Then it happened. At dawn, a message from IT lit up my phone. The shared drive's AI logistics project folder was gone. Vanished. They said someone with administrative privileges deleted it. Logs showed Creed's account at 2:17 a.m. Deleted by admin. Just like that, the physical proof of my work disappeared. My heart thundered. I paced my living room. Nightlight cast shadows on the wall. I felt panic, cold as steel. It was deliberate. They weren't just rewriting history. They were trying to destroy the evidence that I ever mattered. I drove to Raylene's. I had printed copies, contract drafts, email threads, backup screenshots. She answered the door in sweatpants, hair pulled back, acting like it was just another night. I held up the logs. "This is what you erased," I said. Her face flickered. She tried to laugh it off. "Cleanup, for company image." I slid the screenshots toward her. "This image you care so much about. It's built on other people's work. You can't pretend I didn't build it too." Creed came out of the living room. He tried to justify, to smooth it over. "We all signed off. It was collective." "It's only collective if you include every signature," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You don't get to rewrite me out of this." She stared, mouth tight. Paul stayed quiet beside her, watching me like I was making a scene. By the time I left her house, the moon was a sliver. Back in my car, I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel, breathing shallow. I thought about clients I'd built trust with, about partners who believed in me, about the cost of letting this slide. That night, I didn't lie down. I pulled out my backups, USBs, printed drafts, older emails archived offline. I made copies. I emailed Harlan. "We need to talk to a lawyer tomorrow. Prepare the case. Every altered file, every deletion, every erased name. I want proof in hand." I sat in my study, pens spread out, coffee cold. My back ached. My jaw was sore from clenching. They think removing my name is enough. They think silence will win. Tomorrow, I'll make noise. I'll make them see I'm still here and stronger than before. The office looked like a battlefield as soon as I walked in. A notice on the main board announced a leadership reshuffle. Raylene Moxley and Creed Halston were listed as heading new divisions. My name wasn't there. I stared at the board, blinked twice. One of my people smiled stiffly, said, "Good morning," and I realized how small things can suddenly feel heavy. My coffee mug read, "Founder, Boaz Whitaker, yesterday." Now, it said only senior leadership. Such a quiet erasure, but erasing doesn't break everything. Sometimes it sharpens, clarifies what's worth defending. Mid-morning, I had a client presentation lined up, one I built from scratch. Slides, data, hours of late-night prep. Raylene strode in like she owned the room. She said, "This is a team effort. Looks like momentum is real," as if my work was collective but invisible. My mouth dry, I leaned in. "Did you not want my name to matter?" My voice small but clear. A silence followed. Creed's calm smile stumbled. Narrative matters to the board, he said, like that made sense. My throat clenched, my heart shook. I realized then that narrative control wasn't just PR, it was theft. In the afternoon, an email landed, forwarded from a partner firm. It called her the lead visionary behind the campaign. Built upon my blueprint, it said, my blueprint, but no mention of my ownership. In the reply chain, Creed wrote, "Yes, let's let the public believe she built it alone." I held the email between trembling fingers. Shame burned. Anger surged. I took screenshots, saved every line, every header, every timestamp. The betrayal wasn't just backstage anymore, it was public. That evening, I asked for a meeting with the board. Delphina, Zebediah, Harlan included. I laid out contracts, emails, client feedback, logs, evidence, not emotion. Raylene stiffened. Creed called me emotional. Harlan leaned forward, voice low. These discrepancies cannot stand. Zebediah shifted, unease in his eyes. Raylene claimed I was trying to undermine the company, warned, "You will regret making this public." I kept my voice steady. I'm not showing emotion. I'm demanding recognition. There was a tremor in the air, fear, but also courage, my own. I drove home after that meeting, my body exhausted but my mind alert. I called Vera Langford, my mentor, shared parts of the evidence in hushed tones, strategic. She agreed to help, saying, "Truth has teeth." I recorded a voice memo. If they want narrative, I'll give them truth. I typed out a strategy, legal backup, public statement draft, steady reinforcements in the company. At home, fatigue settled in, but my resolve glowed. I closed my eyes, thinking about the people I built this for. My daughter, my staff, myself. I pulled out an old notebook, wrote in shaky but firm script. They think they've silenced me. Tomorrow, I'll break their illusion. Mid-morning, I was sipping cold coffee at my desk when the newsletter landed in my inbox. Company-wide distribution. Big, bold title. Lead Visionaries 2025. The video opened with Raylene's face front and center. Creed followed, standing beside her like the supporting character he'd always been, only this time, they flipped the script. I watched the footage twice, then again slower. The slogans were mine. The color scheme. I built that. Even the storyboard sequence was lifted from the draft I had presented in January. But my name, my face, not a shadow. A few co-workers forwarded it, some with congrats, maybe to cover their discomfort. Others avoided my eye entirely. I sat still for longer than I expected. No emotion on my face, just heat building beneath the skin. This wasn't oversight, it was removal, systematic, calculated. I clenched my jaw and pressed my thumb against the desk so hard it left a red dent in my palm. They didn't just steal credit. They erased the evidence I ever existed in that room. At the debrief later that day, I waited until the end to speak. Casual tone. Quick question. Who led the creative on the Visionaries rollout? Raylene smiled without blinking. We aligned on messaging. The team was incredible. Creed chimed in, arms crossed like he rehearsed this. Media chose Raylene as the face. That's just how it plays. The interns in the room looked down. One of them, Hannah, bit her lip like she wanted to say something but didn't. I leaned in. Calm. Dead still. I'm not asking who they filmed. I'm asking who created it. Raylene glanced at Creed, then back at me. Does it matter? It's team success. It mattered to me. And the next time she tried to sell we, I wasn't buying. Later that afternoon, I walked into a sit-down with one of our long-standing investors. He'd flown in for a quarterly check-in. As we exchanged greetings, Raylene introduced me casually. This is Boaz, our former CEO, now retired. Retired? I blinked. My chair pulled itself back without me noticing. My pulse climbed into my ears. I never retired, I said flatly. The investor paused, brow raised. Oh, well, I was told. Raylene laughed softly. She's just been taking well-earned rest. There was a beat of silence, long enough for the investor to nod, long enough for the lie to settle in the air like dust. No one corrected her. That word, retired, hung over me like a verdict. I remembered the first time Creed told me to take it slow, the time the board voted to redistribute workload, and the new titles that began appearing without discussion. I wasn't asked. I wasn't warned. They were rewriting my story, sentence by sentence. That night, I paced in my home office, dragging my fingers through my hair. My heartbeat felt like thunder in a tight hallway. I opened old meeting notes, pulled up company bylaws, reread every board email from the last 4 months. No vote, no documentation of retirement, nothing official. I hit record on my phone. Voice raw. They've decided I'm retired, without ever asking me. They're not just stealing work, they're stealing history. Then I called Harlan. He picked up on the second ring. There's no record, Harlan, I said. You're not crazy, he replied. That introduction borders on defamation. If it's in print, it's actionable. I nodded to myself. My breath evened. There was still ground to stand on. I opened a blank document and started drafting a statement. Not emotional, not bitter, just factual. Though some tell lies, the record shows the truth. I emailed it to Vera. She called 20 minutes later. It's strong. Keep it clean. Don't go petty. Just facts. Let them hang themselves. I smiled for the first time all day. I picked a journalist, an old contact from a business summit years back. Trustworthy, smart, hungry. I'd release it tomorrow, right before the next board meeting. I whispered to myself, closing my laptop. They pushed me out of the frame. I'm stepping back in, with receipts. And if they tried to stop me, well, if my truth doesn't matter tomorrow, I'll make sure theirs doesn't either. The meeting room felt like the edge of a cliff. I arrived early, heart thudding under my ribs, knowing this was the day they'd try to finish the story without me. Whispers followed me. She's rewriting history. Did you see the new banner? I passed a wall where someone had posted the event announcement. Raylene in full spotlight. No mention of my name. An old ally, Vera, found me near the corner. Her eyes said enough. I breathed in, steady. Raylene stood before the board and the staff in that all-hands meeting, projector lights on, her voice smooth. Pioneering women in tech, Raylene Moxley's vision. The slide deck glowed behind her. There was laughter, applause. My face flickered in and out of frames during the live stream, never named. As if the idea was hers and she had borrowed my hands to build it. When they handed me the notes for speaking, the script said, "Vision belongs to Raylene." I swallowed down bile. I pushed back. I stood. Visionary. This was a joint effort. My voice cut through the applause. The room stilled. Raylene's eyes shifted. Creed's posture stiffened. Board members avoided rising to her gaze. Raylene said, "Words matter, but outcomes matter more." Creed nodded, but outcomes contain names and truth, and she was trying to bury mine. The interns looked at me, some hopeful, some afraid. I saw Hannah's fingers shake. Then came the banner reveal. Founded by vision, led by Raylene Moxley. Gigantic across the stage, cameras clicking. Staff rose and clapped. The moment hit me like ice. My dream name, founder, now only part of a slogan. I remembered laying out that name at 2 a.m. drafts, arguing with logo designers about how founder should appear. Now it was gone. Someone leaned in, whispering, "It's just branding. They didn't mean harm." I didn't laugh. I checked my phone camera, photos of every version, every mock-up. I snapped the banner image, evidence. Later, people started talking. "I always thought you were the founder. We didn't know they were pushing you out." Some approached me with soft apologies. Others pretended nothing changed. When the speeches ended, I slipped out of the boardroom and gathered with Vera and Harlan in a quiet conference room. We reviewed copies, mock-ups with my name crossed out, archived versions we had saved. I asked them, "How many people have these files in their hands? Who else remembers what really happened?" Vera adjusted the lighting so screenshots showed timestamps clear as day. I watched as Harlan traced lines in contracts. I stood tall. not as someone wronged, but as someone who would not go quietly into someone else's narrative. That night, drawing the blinds, I wrote a draft statement. No apologies, just fact. My title, my work, my rights. I collected what I had. Email threads, mock-ups, original drafts, backup drives. I leaned back, exhaustion coursing through me. But my resolve was aflame. If they wanted to cast me as history, they'd need to bury proof. And I kept every shred. I whispered into the dark. I walk into the next meeting with proof in hand. And I will not let it end without reclaiming what's mine. I arrived at the office that morning to an unexpected wave of support. Emails flooded in, short, sincere statements from staff. We remember, you're the founder. People posted affirmations of my work on internal channels. Vera Langford had shared photos of old drafts, screenshots of archived file names with my name clearly visible. Patent sketches circulated quietly, each one a reminder of what I'd built. I stood at my desk, reading each message, feeling solidarity bloom in a place that had tried to bury me. My heart felt both lighter and rattled. The tide was shifting. Around midday, the founders page on our company website changed. My name, once removed or buried in fine print, reappeared under Raylene's. Employees noticed. Slack lit up with, "Finally, thank you," and "This feels right." Without fanfare, the record was corrected. I pressed for a public acknowledgement, and Raylene brushed it off as housekeeping. Creed offered. We needed to reflect more accurately. But I knew better. It was timed. Just before the press event. Inside, I thought, they realize I'm not invisible anymore. When evening came, I launched the public initiative called Innovation with Integrity. I spoke in a rented conference space, standing in front of cameras. I stand here not alone, but with every line of code, every draft, every person who stood by me. I made sure to credit every contributor by name. I brought up the stolen blueprint, calmly exposing how Raylene's campaign borrowed heavily without giving credit. Reporters asked if I expected backlash. I replied, truth has power, but only if it's acknowledged. The room clapped. I heard my own voice steady. That moment was vindication. Not long after, Raylene responded. She gave a slick interview with a local business outlet. Boaz made contributions, she said. But leadership requires more than labor. It needs vision. Creed echoed it in a newsletter, warned that public allegations could damage investor trust. I felt a cold tension grip me. Fear flickered. If the truth was out, was I exposing myself to retaliation? But I had legal counsel on speed dial and allies ready to fact-check at any moment. My strategy was deliberate, not reckless. At home that night, I finalized the public statement. Attached were archival files side by side, my name in the drafts, cross-dated proofs, screenshots of mock-ups they had tried to reinstall without me. I addressed not just Raylene and Creed, but staff, clients, community. Praise should go where credit is due. I posted it. I emailed it to local business journals. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with resolve. I understood the risk, lawsuits, backlash, chaos, but silence would cost more. Before bed, I whispered into the room, though they tell lies, the record shows the truth. I held on to that promise. I slipped my phone onto the nightstand and closed my eyes. Tonight, I sleep not in fear, but knowing tomorrow I reclaim what was mine. A week passed. I woke to a calm room, no buzzing phone, no anxious headlines, just light streaming through the window, warming my face. For the first time in a while, I wasn't bracing for a hit. I sat up slowly, let the silence settle. And it hit me. Silence isn't defeat. Sometimes it's peace finally making its way back home. I opened my inbox. Dozens of emails. Old colleagues, forgotten mentors, people I hadn't heard from in years, reaching out. Proud of your strength, one wrote. It mattered. Buried in the middle was a short note from my daughter. You taught me what resilience looks like. Thank you, Mom. I stopped there. Read it twice. That sentence meant more than any press coverage ever could. I remembered walking back into the building earlier that week. No tension in my chest, no eyes avoiding mine, just familiar walls and people, some of whom nodded, some who looked away. But the air had shifted. Then the news broke. The board had voted. Raylene stepped down. Press release said, pursuing other opportunities. Of course it did. Creed, just behind her, retired for personal reasons. No apologies, no honesty. But the exits spoke for themselves. They offered me the CEO chair. I declined. I'm not here to sit at the head of the table anymore, I told them. But I know who should. I recommended Lisa, young, sharp, principled. I'd mentored her since she was an intern. She didn't play games. She listened more than she talked. And when she did speak, people leaned in. The board hesitated at first. She wasn't flashy, but I reminded them, we'd already seen what flash without truth looked like. They agreed. Lisa was in. I took a consulting role, by choice. I'd fought my battles. Now, I wanted to clear paths for others. That afternoon, I met Vera at our usual cafe. The same one where we once drafted product names on napkins between sips of bitter coffee. She pulled one out from her purse, a napkin sketch from years ago, yellowing at the corners. Truth took time, she said, but it found its voice. We talked about the countless women erased in rooms like ours, how close we came to joining them. But we didn't. We stayed. We spoke. We stood. By the time our mugs were empty, we had a plan. A workshop series on ethical innovation, founder ownership, legacy without ego. She'd speak. I'd teach. We'd bring the next generation in, not just to build, but to build right. That weekend, I drove out alone. Quiet road, soft breeze, open sky. I brought one of our old company journals and visited Boaz's grave. Sat there. No tears left. Just stillness. I brought you this, I said, placing the journal down. They finally heard us. And you were never just the idea guy. You were the heartbeat. I let my fingers linger on the cover before standing. This was always ours, I said. I'm just the voice now. And just like that, I felt something loosen in me. Not revenge, not victory, just release. That night, I sat in my home study, opened a new document, typed the title, Building What They Couldn't Bury. The first chapter came easily. I thought of my daughter. I thought of every woman who'd ever been told to shrink. I wrote with them in mind. We all leave something behind. Our work, our stories, our truths. Make sure what you leave can stand up to the light. My story didn't break me. It built me. Not all endings are about silence. Some are just the beginning of your own voice. A week passed. I woke to a calm room, no buzzing phone, no anxious headlines, just light streaming through the window, warming my face. For the first time in a while, I wasn't bracing for a hit. I sat up slowly, let the silence settle, and it hit me. Silence isn't defeat. Sometimes it's peace finally making its way back home. I opened my inbox. Dozens of emails. Old colleagues, forgotten mentors, people I hadn't heard from in years, reaching out. Proud of your strength, one wrote. It mattered. Buried in the middle was a short note from my daughter. You taught me what resilience looks like. Thank you, Mom. I stopped there, read it twice. That sentence meant more than any press coverage ever could. I remembered walking back into the building earlier that week. No tension in my chest, no eyes avoiding mine. Just familiar walls and people, some of whom nodded, some who looked away. But the air had shifted. Then, the news broke. The board had voted. Raylene stepped down. Press release said, pursuing other opportunities. Of course it did. Creed, just behind her, retired for personal reasons. No apologies, no honesty. But the exits spoke for themselves. They offered me the CEO chair. I declined. I'm not here to sit at the head of the table anymore, I told them. But I know who should. I recommended Lisa, young, sharp, principled. I'd mentored her since she was an intern. She didn't play games. She listened more than she talked. And when she did speak, people leaned in. The board hesitated at first. She wasn't flashy, but I reminded them, we'd already seen what flash without truth looked like. They agreed. Lisa was in. I took a consulting role, by choice. I'd fought my battles. Now, I wanted to clear paths for others. That afternoon, I met Vera at our usual cafe, the same one where we once drafted product names on napkins between sips of bitter coffee. She pulled one out from her purse, a napkin sketch from years ago, yellowing at the corners. Truth took time, she said, but it found its voice. We talked about the countless women erased in rooms like ours, how close we came to joining them, but we didn't. We stayed. We spoke. We stood. By the time our mugs were empty, we had a plan. A workshop series on ethical innovation, founder ownership, legacy without ego. She'd speak. I'd teach. We'd bring the next generation in, not just to build, but to build right. That weekend, I drove out alone. Quiet road, soft breeze, open sky. I brought one of our old company journals and visited Boaz's grave. Sat there. No tears left. Just stillness. I brought you this, I said, placing the journal down. They finally heard us. And you. You were never just the idea guy. You were the heartbeat. I let my fingers linger on the cover before standing. This was always ours, I said. I'm just the voice now. And just like that, I felt something loosen in me, not revenge, not victory, just release. That night, I sat in my home study, opened a new document, typed the title, Building What They Couldn't Bury. The first chapter came easily. I thought of my daughter. I thought of every woman who'd ever been told to shrink. I wrote with them in mind. We all leave something behind. Our work, our stories, our truths. Make sure what you leave can stand up to the light. My story didn't break me. It built me. Not all endings are about silence. Some are just the beginning of your own voice.